Welcome to the Maple Leaf Community Council October meeting. Our October meeting every year is traditionally our candidates and issues night. By popular acclamation, we have moved it earlier in the week, or earlier in the month than we typically have it. Our meetings are typically the last Wednesday of every month. We moved it earlier so that people could come to this meeting, and then when the ballot arrives in the mail on Friday or Saturday, you are already informed and you can vote right away. Which is great because that cuts down on the number of robocalls and other phone calls that you get in this election season. The Maple Leaf Community Council is about 30 years old. Your executive board is elected to represent the people of Maple Leaf. We have elections every year in April. Our goal here is tonight to give you an unbiased look at the candidates. We have questions that I will be asking, but most of the questions will come from the audience. As far as how all this works, we require and ask that everybody be civil, so no booing, no hissing, no shouting at the people up here. If you disagree with what they're saying, feel free to give them a scowl and shake of their head. If you want to applaud, that's okay too. When the Q&A comes out there, keep your questions brief. And what we're looking for is questions, not monologues. So make sure you get a question. Understand that I may rephrase the question to the folks to either broaden it or narrow the scope a little bit for the 30 seconds to 90 seconds that the individual candidates have to answer. We have 3, 6, 8 races tonight. The last race of the night is a half hour with our 2 mayoral candidates. So does anybody have any questions about the candidates and issues portion of the evening? All right. All of the council and mayoral candidates filled out questionnaires. These are questionnaires that were developed by the Maple Leaf Community Council Executive Board, as well with input from the community. We did these questionnaires in the 2011 election, got great feedback from the community, and so we repeated it again this year. These focus on issues that are specific to Maple Leaf and specific to quality of life in Maple Leaf. Some of they run anywhere from 4 pages to 8 or 9 pages. The link to find these links directly from the homepage of the Maple Leaf Community Council website, which, like I said, is mapleleafcommunity.org. They're really informative. Even though I've worked with some of the incumbents for years, Maple Leaf Community Council, I always love reading their answers. And these questionnaires are fun too, because when we go and talk to council members and they tell us something different than perhaps what we heard here or what they wrote on the questionnaire, I can say, wait a minute, you answered that this way. So what changed? All right, we are going to, and the other thing is that one of the requirements for participating in this forum was filling that questionnaire out. Because that way, it's not just the 3 or 4 minutes that people are going to be talking up here. You have answers to many, many more questions that you can see from them. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Seattle School District Position 4. We have Sue Peters and run up, and Suzanne Dale Heskey. And I got to pull something else out of here. The other things, for all the candidates who aren't currently in the room, we have a very strict timing policy. Sylvia here has time cards and a stopwatch. If you go over, you're going to start hearing this. This is really annoying, so don't make Sylvia ring this, but we are not afraid to bring you off the stage. And so both the candidates would step over here. So these are, the way this will work is for this particular one, we will have 2-minute speeches for each candidate, and then a 1-minute rebuttal, and then we'll move into Q&A. Sue, you can start off first.
Hi everybody, thank you very much to Maple Leaf Community Center for hosting this. My name is Sue Peters, and I am the only candidate in this race with nearly 10 years of experience in the Seattle School District. I have 2 children in the district, a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. And during these years, I've gotten increasingly more involved, first as a volunteer in my children's classroom, but also at the district level. I've served on 2 task forces, the Superintendent Search Task Force, the Strategic Plan Task Force, and I've worked with community leaders to forge the vision, the mission, and the goals of our district, for the next 5 years. I've also been involved with education policy at the local and national level. I am trained as a journalist. I have a master's degree from Stanford, and I have taken a look at education policies and written about them for the last 5 years. I'm a founding member of Parents Across America, the Seattle Math Coalition. We want to bring stronger math to our schools, and I'm also founding editor of the Seattle Education Forum. Now, I'm very proud of my grassroots campaign. We're an authentic, community-based campaign. We did very well in the primary. My opponent's going to tell you she won the primary, but the fact is there was 4 points between us. And we were able to win this despite a negative campaign on behalf of a political action committee that's working on behalf of my opponent that spent $32,000 in the primary. And they now have $100,000 in the political action committee to help my opponent win. And this is a very troubling issue, and I would like people to take a look at that, because no matter what you think of your candidate, you have to take a look at the role of excess money in our races and whether this is good for democracy. So by the numbers, I'd like to say that I have been involved with issues on the ground in the district. I've proven involvement with them. I spoke out against the closures. I marched against the closures. I've spoken up about strong curriculum, and I will speak up for the community on the school board. I'm proud of my endorsements, the Strangers endorsement, the Seattle Education Association, the Teachers Union, and every single legislative Democratic district since I've been in the race. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support.
Good evening, I'm Suzanne Dale Esty, and it's really a pleasure to be with you tonight. I went to Eckstein Middle School and Roosevelt High School, so I grew up in this area, and I understand the needs of the community. And I'm running for school board because I'm ready to be a fighter for high-quality public education for all children. We're at a really critical point in the Seattle Public Schools. We have a school board that admits in its own self-evaluation that it's utterly dysfunctional. And yet, a lot of people don't realize this, but Seattle has a 30% dropout rate. And far too many kids are graduating from our schools unprepared for college, career, and life. We have an embarrassing disparity between the haves and have-nots, and a huge achievement and opportunity gap in our city. And I know that I can take my 20-plus years of experience working really at every level of government on education policy and advocacy, among other issues, and be a problem solver on these issues. I'm someone who works with business and labor, communities and nonprofits to bring people together, create jobs, and move forward with solutions. Really briefly about myself, I'm a K-12 graduate of the Seattle Public Schools. I have 2 children in the system, and I have served on a slew of education committees, primarily in the Renton School District, where I was most recently the Economic Development Director. But I was actually on the Seattle School Board and have spent a lot of time on committees in the Seattle School Board when I was a high school student. I served as a student representative to the school board. Really briefly, there's 3 key areas that I want to focus on, and I want to talk about solutions in this campaign, focusing on student success, high-quality education for all kids, and community engagement and shared values. Briefly on my campaign, we're running a very broad-based campaign. We have over 600 donors, more donors than any campaign in the history of the Seattle School Board, and more donors below $100 than my opponent has in entirety. 80% of our donors are from Seattle. I'd really be honored to have your support. I have lots of support all across the city, and I'd love to represent this part of the city on the Seattle School Board. Thank you.
Sue, you have a minute for a rebuttal or follow-up?
My opponent has spent the last 5 months disparaging the school board. These are her potentially future colleagues. I don't think that's the way to go. I believe in collaborating and working positively with whoever my colleagues are going to be on the board. I'm proud to be endorsed by 4 of the current members of the board, and I will work with them well. In terms of the money, you really have to take a look. I mean, Suzanne's talking about my money. I have $28,000 in my campaign, which is a pretty normal, robust amount for a school board race. She has $100,000 in her campaign. And $80,000 of it comes from only 3 people. And these are business people who do not have any children in the public schools. We're talking about Steve Ballmer, we're talking about Matt Griffin, we're talking about Jeff Raves, the CEO of the Gates Foundation. These people are essentially trying to buy this election. And this is a very troubling trend. I'm here to earn your endorsement based on my experience, my knowledge, which I will bring to the board, and I will represent the community. My opponents is being bankrolled by a small group of people. Yes, they're all from Seattle. Yes, they're local. But they are very wealthy business people who are trying to buy this election. And that's a very troubling fact. Thank you.
All right.
I gotta say, this sort of disrespect is the kind of thing people are fed up with in Washington DC right now. And it's just really disappointing. Less than 5% of my donors have maxed out in this campaign, and a huge number of them are very small contributions. I wanted to point out briefly on my endorsements. I have over 30, actually 31 this evening, former and current state legislators, including your own Senator Frock, Representative Farrell, former Senator Ken Jacobson, and Representative Kenny have endorsed my campaign. And really briefly on the business contributions, you know, there's actually probably quite a few people here in this room that work in the private sector, and the private sector needs, just like the nonprofit sector, needs well-prepared workers for their workforce. And we need to get our kids ready for college, career, and life, and we're not doing that right now, and it's not acceptable. I think I've addressed most of the issues. Dysfunction, real quick. The school board, 7 members of the board voted in their own self-evaluation, 1.3 on a 4-point scale that they weren't getting along. So, you know, I'm sorry, but we can do better, and I'd love to be part of that.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for these candidates? Raise your hand up. Here.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Brooks, and I have a 3rd grader, and my 3rd grader is in school here. I'm a little disappointed about the tone of both of your campaigns tonight, because as a parent who's had to get very involved very quickly because my daughter's school was under threat of closure last year, I was hoping to hear more about the issues and less about the money. I read about the money in the papers. So my questions for you are, where do you stand with regards to the X4 levy that came out last year and the fact that that levy is just a band-aid for the Northeast? We have 17 kids on my block, only 5 of them are school age,
Okay.
the rest of them are under
Quick
school.
questions.
And my second question is, where do you stand on improving the advanced learning programs within this district, which are completely, I appreciate that we have kids that need to
All right.
get up to standard, but that is also failing.
All right.
Yeah.
1 minute. You have 1 minute to answer the questions.
Sure, these are 2 issues that I've been very connected to myself. As far as the VEX levy, you're right. I mean, it goes only so far. We definitely need to reopen buildings. And I spoke out against the closures in 2009, and we've had the ramifications ever since. We have to open more buildings. We're a growing district. And the boundary issues are also controversial. We have to take a look and make those fair. As far as advanced learning, my own children have been in the advanced learning program, and I've seen it basically being dismantled and weakened. I think we need to rebuild Spectrum, make that more places. We need to make ALO meaningful. And as far as APP, I don't believe splintering it into lots of places will be a good thing. You know, I served on the strategic plan. We talked about access and equity. There's no point in giving our students access to something that is not worth going to. So we have to invest heavily in these programs that make them worth going to, and not splinter them into lots of places. We also need a new leader for advanced learning, because Bob Vaughn hasn't been replaced yet.
No. Go ahead. Helen, no.
Thank you. Sex 4, not enough money, huge overcrowding issues, particularly up here in the Northeast. When I went to Eckstein, there were too many portables. Adding more portables is perhaps a short-term mandate, but not a long-term solution. And the district isn't using the wealth of resources we have in this community to plan ahead strategically and make sure that we're not jerking families around. Families want certainty and stability. They're buying homes based on these school assignments, and too many families are getting moved around. In a too short period of time, I went to 3 of the 5 boundary meetings, and the families are really frustrated, and it's not acceptable. Advanced learning, I'm a product of advanced learning in the Seattle Public Schools. I couldn't be more committed to it. And the district and its advanced learning task force don't even have a clear sense of what the mission is. The staff turmoil has been a huge problem, and frankly, that has a lot to do with the politics of the school board, and that we're losing good people because the district isn't a great place to work.
Questions? Quick. I appreciate you're with another campaign. Ms. Questions, did you have a question here? Wait for the microphone, please.
Hi there. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, just 1 second. Because this is for Maple Leaf Community Council members, Maple Leaf members, you're with another campaign, so we're going to take questions from our community members first.
I'm a citizen.
I appreciate that. We've had this conversation before. Go ahead,
Different
ma'am.
kinds of citizens on Kent and all of them.
Be quiet.
What does it require?
I believe you need to be quiet.
All people are citizens.
I really appreciate you both coming here today. I've got 2 children as well in the Seattle School District, and they're both being affected by the changes going on. We've been reassigned to different places, different schools. And so my question for you, really, after I did a lot of advocacy down at Seattle School Board last year and the year before, and my question really is, why do you want this job? You don't get any money. It's there, you know, it's tons of work. You know, everything is there, and so I appreciate that you're both signing up for this. But can you just give me a little lowdown here on why you actually want it?
Okay, 30 seconds for each candidate.
You bet. And you're right, I get that question often. I'm a product of 3 generations of teachers. I've been committed to public education my whole life. I was out carrying public levy signs in this community just about when I could walk. And Seattle deserves to have a great school system. We have a pretty good school system. Lots of families pitching in, and we have really good teachers working hard, but they don't have the resources they need to be successful. Our students aren't getting the quality of education that they need to be successful, and we just have the huge disparities that I talked about that are unacceptable, and that's a big motivation for me.
Okay.
For me, it's really simple. I really feel I can do some good, and that's what I want to do. I have a deep sense of public service and public commitment to this. And I think my years of experience working just as you have, advocating for my students and learning about aspects of the district has made me, a knowledgeable person, someone who can connect community with policy. That is the main thing I want to do. I've seen too many decisions coming from on high down onto us in the community that doesn't correspond to our realities. And so I'm going to bring the community knowledge and the community connection to board policy and make votes that make sense. I will vote against closures. I will vote against weak math. I will vote in support of our teachers. And that's what I would bring. Thank you very much.
So everybody give a hand to these 2 candidates. Thank you very much. All right, next up is Charter Amendment 19, which is district elections. So can we have the both the pro side, which is Donna Hartman Miller, and the con side, is that you, Marjorie? Marjorie Rhodes, come up to the front. Come on, Marjorie. Come on. That's okay. Do you folks have any preference? Would you like to go first? Yes, stand over here. Would you like to go first?
Doesn't matter, you want to go first, or?
Why don't we let you go first? Go ahead, Marjorie. So this is 2.5 minute speeches with 90-second rebuttals.
Currently, you get to vote for all 9 seats on the city council, and no candidate is off limits to you, the voter. But if districting passes, in the future, you will only get to vote for 3, and most of the candidates will be off limits to you. That in itself should be sufficient reason for voting no on Charter Amendment 19, but there are still other reasons. Politicians still get to serve at large, even if elected by districts. For example, there are 9 people on the county council, and all 9 of them have jurisdiction over you as a resident of this county, yet you are barred from participating in 8 of their 9 elections because the county council is elected by districts. And districting tends to cause elections in which incumbents run unopposed. For instance, this happens so often on the county council that I researched back to 1999, found there have been 47 county council races since then, 24 of which were unopposed. Do you want to see this happen on the city council? Why do the districting people keep putting this on the ballot? Because their argument is that geography trumps all other considerations, and they claim it's easier to campaign by districts than at large. Even if this is true, are we to do what's best for the politicians or what's best for we the people? there are serious handicaps to campaigning by district. Candidates don't get to choose their opponents, and it's more difficult to unseat incumbents elected by districts. And our opponents claim this will take the big money out of politics. What hypocrisy. The only reason this is on the ballot again is because a wealthy businesswoman put up almost $250,000 to pay signature gatherers. And by the way, David Miller's been paid about $4,000 so far for internet services working on this campaign. And I would like to think that our side, a volunteer grassroots campaign, I would like to think that grassroots counts for something. Thank you.
Hi, I am Donna Hartman-Miller, and I am speaking for Charter Amendment 19. Currently, we elect all 9 of our council members at large, which means all of our council members have to represent 617,000 people. With the hybrid system that we are proposing with Charter Amendment 19, it would be a 7-2 system, so that every person in the city would be one of 88,000 would be representing one of their council members. Think of the difference between that. If you look on these flyers, it shows you the difference on how much smaller it is. We just listened to the school districts talking about that. And we all know with school sizes, it's better when there's fewer students in the class because they get more attention from the teacher. It's the same thing with council representation. You'll be a much stronger vote for someone that has to represent you. The council members will have closer relationships with the people who vote them in. You'll have an opportunity to actually vote for someone that you've talked to and seen the face of, instead of somebody that you think you recognize the name of. This will be much more accountable because your vote will be powerful to that individual council member. This also will let the council members better represent the issues that you talk to them about. When there's conversations that are going on in council, they'll have already talked to you, and they'll know what the issues are. They'll know the school that your kids have to walk to through 6 inches of water whenever it rains bad, because it's in their neighborhood, and they've heard about it before. And when there's conversations at the table, they can bring that to the table and bring that up. This is something that is not going to cost the city any more money. The city treasurer did a fiscal note that said there will be no additional dollars going to make this work for us. It also does make grassroots campaigns more possible. You can go and you can actually doorbell a district with 88,000 people in it. I'm not saying you're hitting on 88,000 doors, but you're able to get out there and talk to the people in a way that you can throughout the city. And that will help drop the cost of these campaigns for people, so you don't have to spend all your time fundraising. You can get out and talk to people about the issues. And as a council member, that's gold. One last thing I'd like to bring up about this is talking about the people that endorse it. It's almost easier to talk about the people that haven't endorsed it because it is endorsed by so many groups. The 46th District Democrats, the 11th, the Northwest Progressive Institute, the King County Democrats, the King County GOP, Councilman Rob Dembowski, Representatives Jerry Paulette and Justin Follett, Farrell, I can finish pronouncing your name, I apologize, Senator David Frocht, Speaker Frank Chop, the Seattle Times, and The Stranger. Let's look at 2 different groups that recognize the value.
90 seconds.
This may very well cost you money because districting leads to pork barrel politics, which could mean higher property taxes or higher sales tax, or we could have a lot of in-city fighting between districts in a city divided. Also, their endorsees include politicians, all of whom are elected by districts, no surprise. And we worked so hard here on the Save Waldo issue a few years back. And our enemies were not the City Council, but Greg Nichols, the Department of Planning and Development, which is not accountable to the voters. And who was it on the City Council who came to some of our meetings and was most sympathetic to us and spent time talking with David Miller? It was Richard Conlon, who lives in the South End, which just goes to show that political ideologies are not confined to geographic boundaries. Your soulmate is not necessarily, your political soulmate, I should say, is not necessarily going to be someone who lives in your part of town. Please visit our website because we have rebutted all of our opponents' arguments. Thank you.
47 of the top 50 cities in the country have gone to districts, and they are not having pork barrel situations and fighting between the districts. This is a way to make your voice heard better. They have to listen to you because your vote is more powerful for them. This does not forbid you from going to talk to other council members. Of course you can go talk to other council members. We are very grateful when Richard Conlon came and helped us with Waldo, but it took a while. We were working on Waldo for a long time and talking to a lot of different people to get their attention. Luckily, Councilmember Conlon did listen to us and he did help us out with that, and we were very grateful for it. But if we had had a council member that was in our district, we're betting it wouldn't have taken us so long to get the attention because they would have already heard about it and we wouldn't have had to go out and talk to so many of them. If you have an issue, all of the council members will represent you. All of them are representing Seattle, but you're going to have one that you get to vote for and specifically vote for and talk to. And they'll come out to our meetings more often because they'll be able to. They won't have to go to 47 neighborhoods all over the city. It'll be a much smaller number. Maybe at our Maple Leaf Summer Social, we will have people there that we can talk to about the issues, and they'll hear about them ahead of time before these issues even come up and become a problem within the city. I hope you vote yes on Charter Amendment 19. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sir? No.
Why not?
Because this is for Maple Leaf Community Council members, if nobody else has a question, then perhaps I'll call on you. But in every meeting I've ever run, you've been a completely disruptive force, and so let's not do that at this meeting.
It's very simple
Over
question.
here, I don't care. Over here.
Hi, where I live is technically bordering 3 different districts, and so my issues could fall in all 3 of them, so I'm just curious how I might be impacted one way or the other.
30 seconds. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
I don't hear very well, I'm sorry.
Okay, where I live is bordering all 3 districts. I can see I'm technically in one of them, but I imagine my issues, my children's schools, where we go, could fall into any one of those neighboring districts, and I'm curious how I might be impacted.
I understand you to say you are on the border of different districts. That's a good reason right there to oppose districting, because with the redistricting that will take place every 10 years, you can find yourself being bounced from one district to another without even moving.
Hand it over to Donna to answer.
My answer to that would be is, at any point you're going to live close. Some people are going to live close to the border or something, but you will still have a representative that you can vote for. You can still go to the other council members about that. Just because you live on the border or something doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to influence the vote of a council member and have a conversation with them about issues that are important to you. The other thing is there are going to be issues that go across borders, and you can always go talk to the other ones as well. There's nothing stopping you from that. There's nothing that stops you in this issue, in this situation.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Over here.
Okay, what makes you think that there isn't a bias toward neighborhoods on the council already? And I would say, for instance, Harold, do you think he doesn't represent South Seattle and the ethnic neighborhoods more than the North Seattle people? Also, what about Conlon? He wants to destroy your neighborhood. What do you, and replace it with high-rise apartments. What makes you think that he's on your side?
First of all,
30 seconds.
let's not blame the city council for everything that's wrong with our city. We are still living under the pro-development permits of Greg Nichols. He was very pro-developer, and some of those permits were already in place. And let's not forget that Department of Planning and Development has a lot of power, and they are not answerable to the people, but only to the mayor.
What makes me think that the council members are not already neighborhood-centric? Well, I'm not saying that they aren't neighborhood-centric, and this is not about the current council members that are in there. This is about the future of our city. This is about having Stronger representation. This is about being able to talk to the people and having them be more accountable and to represent you better. And if your district happens to have neighborhood issues, you'll be able to have a little bit more power in that area. I guess that's the best way to answer it. I'm sorry.
We'll take just 1 second. Is anybody here anybody here pro or con from the Prop 1 campaign? All right, we'll take this last one here.
I'm sitting here just having seen what went on in Washington, D.C., where in the House of Representatives, and they're elected in small geographic regions, how that seems to lead to a deadlock. And they don't really represent a consensus viewpoint. And I'm thinking, gee, if we do that in Seattle, won't we have the same type of gridlock as opposed to having them elected from a broader region rather than a narrow geographic one, where they'll end up having to be more consensus-based. So what's the flaw in this thinking, if there is one? I'd like to have you respond to that.
First of all, I believe that having districting is very divisive and that it's going to be harder to get consensus on the city council because remember, it's still going to take 5 council members to make a majority. And I think that with 7 of them elected by districts, it is going to be a little more difficult to bring them together if they're all fighting for pork barrel politics and to get the most for their own district in order to get reelected.
Well, my first answer to that is, Lord, I hope Seattle is better than the nation at whole when it comes to that sort of thing. I don't see this sort of divisiveness. I see there's a lot more working together on issues in Seattle than there might be at the federal level. But the second thing is, when we're talking about the pork barrel politics, I don't necessarily see that happening in Seattle because all of our neighborhoods tend to have the same issues. And what's going to happen here is they're going to be brought together to the table while they're discussing them, and the issues will be dealt with before they become problems. That's what I'm hoping for. We vote yes on February 19th.
Round of applause for both these speakers. All right, last call for representatives of the Prop 1 campaign. So just so everybody knows, the way this worked is that we, at the end of September, we started sending out to the campaigns invitations to this. Those people who didn't respond to us generally got phone calls as well. Both the Prop 1 yes and no, the people who have spoken, you've seen the papers, I reached out to them, so it wasn't for lack of trying that we have those folks haven't shown up. So what this allows us to do is allows us to spend a little bit more time in Q&A as we go forward. I see that both of the candidates are here for council position 2. So would Richard Conlon and Shawna Sawan come up? And for this, yes, go ahead, applause. So we have 4 candidates in the room, so I'll give a quick update as to how we do this. You'll have 2.5 minutes to speak with a 90-second rebuttal, and then we'll have Q&A. For the council candidates, I'll start off with a question up here, and then we will go out to the crowd out there. We've asked the crowd to please be polite, no booing, no hissing. If they don't like what you say, they're supposed to frown at you and shake their head. So watch for that. Clapping and those kinds of things are allowed as well. So we will start with Richard Conlon, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to you all for being here. It's a pleasure and great to be here in Maple Leaf. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to have represented you over the years. I am a community activist who started off as a public safety chair and land use chair in my community council, the Madrona Community Council. I then got involved in the Central Area Neighborhood Plan and then wound up running for city council because I wanted to make sure that our neighborhoods had the things that they needed in order to make Seattle work effectively for all of us. I work with you in Maple Leaf on a lot of things. It's great to see the celebration that's going to happen for the reservoir. I was the person who helped get Thornton Creek daylighted on this, what used to be the south parking lot of Northgate Mall. I worked to get you the Maple Leaf Pea Patch and make sure that you were able to get the money and the funds to get that acquired and make that Pea Patch happen. I worked with you to make sure that we were able to get the community center and library sited and to make sure that we had a community center and library here in Maple Leaf. So it's been great to be working with you. But I'm not done yet. I've got lots of things I want to make happen and things that are going to be a real benefit to this community. We're now building light rail. We've let the contract from University District to Northgate. It's going to be a tremendous asset to this community if it is worked well and managed properly and gets into the community effectively. One of the things that I was able to do was to persuade the Sound Transit Board, which I sit on, to fund the pedestrian and bicycle path across I-5. That's been a dream of this neighborhood for a long time. It was in the Northgate neighborhood plan, and I was able to actually make that happen. And it is now in design, and it's going to be built. That's going to be an important piece of access for people to get to the Northgate station. And there's lots more things like that that we're going to be able to do as a result of the commitment that Sound Transit and the city have made to better access to the Northgate station. So those are the kind of things that I do. There's lots of issues in this city. I'm working on transit, that's very important, making sure that our buses get funded and the light rail keeps moving, but also that we have our roads and bridges maintained well, and make sure that that keeps happening as well. I'm supporting our school district, working with them through the Families Education Levy and other ways in which to make the school district better. And the council is committed to a universal preschool program that we are moving towards going into full implementation in the next couple of years. Public safety is incredibly important. It's the foundation and the basis for what we can do in our neighborhoods. And finally, I should mention human services and all of the great things we need to do to make sure that nobody gets left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us here. My name is Shama Salam. I am an economics professor at Seattle Central Community College. I am an immigrant from India and I've lived in Seattle for 7 years. And in yet another election flooded with candidates eager to serve corporate interests, I am running to represent working people and grassroots communities who have little voice in city government. Seattle is becoming an increasingly unaffordable place to live for most of us. Many of Seattle's workers are among the working poor, particularly women and people of color, and the gender pay gap in the metropolitan area is breathtaking, especially the gap between men and single women caring for families. Rent has been rising astronomically, creating misery for low-income people, women, people of color, the elderly, and the disabled, and people on fixed incomes are especially vulnerable. As you might have heard, elderly residents in Ballard have recently formed a union to protect themselves against these attacks on their rent. The city government, exemplified by 16-year incumbent Richard Conlon, has overseen decades of displacement, gentrification, increased homelessness, and an accelerated loss of our existing low-income housing stock. I'm campaigning for a citywide $15 an hour minimum wage and for a millionaire tax in order to fund public education and mass transit. We fully support the universal preschool, but we advocate for progressive taxation to fund for these things because Seattle has a lot of wealth and the burden of taxation should not be put on working families, the middle class, or the low-income people. I'm also campaigning for rent control, inclusionary zoning, and development impact fees in order to make sure that affordable housing, instead of going down, starts going up, and we have solutions for prices of the affordable housing. We have a council member here who was the only person on the city council who voted against paid sick leave. He has a 16-year record of serving big business interests. He has frozen transit funding twice. And the other problem of transit is that it is grossly underserving several neighborhoods, especially populated with low income and people of color. And we need to address those questions. And we are all for PPAC, but I think the time has come to raise the bar on environmental sustainability and what's actually possible. And the success of our campaign so far, which has been phenomenal for a grassroots campaign running for the first time in City Council, the echo we've been getting is testament to the fact that people are ready for change and we need this to happen.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to try and go into every point that my opponent mentioned because there's a lot of misstatements and mistruths there. But what I am going to say is that the work that I have done has earned me the respect and the support of so many people around this community. I've been named Hunger Fighter of the Year by Food Lifeline for my work to support food issues and challenge hunger. I was named Social Justice Visionary by Casa Latina for my work to help immigrant communities. I was given the Take Action Award by the King County Coalition Against Domestic Violence for my work on domestic violence issues. I'm proud of the work that I've done. I'm proud of the fact that I represent all of this city. The business community is part of this city. It needs to be part of our discussions. We need to work with them and include them in order to make the progress we need to make. I'm endorsed by the King County Labor Council, the Sierra Club, the King County Democrats, and all of the Democratic districts. I'm also proud and honored to have the endorsement of so many other people around the city, people from neighborhoods just like yours, who care about what's happening in their neighborhoods and care about everything that's happening in our city. We can make progress, but we can only make that progress by working together. And that's the way in which I've carried out my work on the City Council and what I intend to keep doing with your help. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your vote in this election. Thank you.
I think we all agree that we need to include small businesses at the table for discussion, and in fact, they haven't been. If you look at the business tax code, if you look at the cost of capital borrowing, small businesses are the ones that suffer. And in reality, we have a city council that for the most part is serving the interests of big business, not of working people and neighborhoods and small businesses. And on a good day, we may have two voices to support our issues, and it's hard to get majorities on progressive issues. And as far as endorsements go, I mean, I really don't, I want my work to speak for myself, not who's endorsing me, but as long as we're on the topic of endorsements, my campaign has been endorsed by 6 different labor unions. The Seattle Education Association, the teachers union, has just given a strong statement of support to my campaign. The Divest UW campaign, which is part of a nationwide movement to divest from fossil fuels, has endorsed our campaign with a ringing endorsement. And you all know that the Sierra Club leadership endorsed, but with, they said they reluctantly endorsed. And as far as the Labor Council is concerned, just tonight, there was a vote in the Labor Council for a dual endorsement for my campaign, and we got a strong majority, but we didn't get a 2/3 majority. We got 28 votes for my campaign, 28 votes against, and I think this is really shaking things up. I mean, this is a weak endorsement for a 16-year incumbent, and it shows that things are changing, and if we want to be part of this change, then we have to make it happen. We have to actively participate.
Here. And first question, Ms. Salon. The question is, you have a minute to answer. Please identify an issue that's unique to Maple Leaf and tell us how you would address it when you were on council.
I think an issue that is relevant to Maple Leaf, although I'm not sure if it's unique because that's the tragedy of what's happening in the city. A lot of what neighborhoods are facing are common issues related to sustainability, housing, and the availability of sidewalks. How much attention is being paid by the city government for these urgent questions that people need attention to? And I think that if you look at the overwhelming support for the city council for neighborhood issues, that has steadily gone down. 38 neighborhoods used to be part of the discussion, active discussion, and now they're not. And as you correctly pointed out, the Department of Planning and Development is the one that is taking the lead on this, and they have a conflict of interest because they're funded by big developers, and that is the problem for neighborhoods.
Okay. And so the same question is, please identify an issue that's unique to Maple Leaf and tell us what you will do on council to address it.
Thank you. Well, there's a lot of issues that are unique to Maple Leaf that we need to work on. The sidewalk issue is one that's very important. It's not unique to Maple Leaf, but it's very strong and important in the North End, and Maple Leaf is one of the areas that has suffered from it. I was able to successfully get funding from the City Council and the city budget for things like the 98th Street sidewalk, for sidewalk on Ravenna, lots of other things that we've been able to do, but we don't have the resources to to be able to fund both the sidewalks and the drainage issues, and that's the thing that we need to move forward with next. I would like to see our drainage utility become more active and take more participation in the sidewalk issue, because that's what's driving up the cost of sidewalks in this city. And we have the opportunity, I think, to move in that direction and allow us to partner between the Department of Transportation, particularly with an expanded Bridging the Gap levy next year, and with the drainage utility being able to actually provide some of those drainage funds, so we can get more sidewalks built on the arterials, on safe routes to school, on all the places that we need it.
Okay. Question here? Good.
I would like to hear, as a sitting council member and as somebody who's running, what your position on this district election, district-wide election of council members, what your feelings on it. Thank you.
Okay, 30 seconds to answer. Okay, go ahead, answer. Everybody hear the question?
The question is the position on district council, district elections. You know, I don't have a philosophical position one way or another on whether districts are better or whether at-large are better. I think they both can work in different situations. My personal feeling is that being at-large has given me the chance to work very closely with you and with many other neighborhoods around the city. So I prefer actually having the at-large system. If the district system is put in place, I'm sure we'll find a way to make it work, but my personal preference is the at-large.
I think the pro-district side did a great job, but they didn't mention, at least as far as I heard, the most important argument in favor of districting is that I can tell you from personal experience of having run a grassroots campaign with a limited amount of funds, because we don't take money from big corporations. That is a very difficult thing. It's a daunting task for an at-large race, and it really makes a difference if you're running a district-wide election, and that is the crux of the issue. If you're tired of corporate politicians and business as usual, then districting is not the bad issue for everything, but it will be a big step forward.
Okay, next question. We'll go with Joel here. Questions, not speeches, Joel. Quick question.
I've been walking around with this political announcement now for months, I think, and I've wondered all this time, I've had it, whether there'd be a chance to talk more about what is kind of an accusation being made by the challenger to this position, having to do with our incumbent being involved, if you read this, voting against paid sick leave, voted to criminalize panhandling and so on, and not progressive points of view. Is there more to this story? Can it be clarified for me and everybody? What is this all about? Is it true, or is there no basis for it? Can you both talk about that?
One minute answer.
Of course it's true. I mean, he is the only council member who voted against paid sick leave, and I'm sure he will come up with very nice sounding arguments for it, and of course he should have the chance to say that. But I will tell you already, you can look at the website, his website, and see his argumentation. It is basically left cover for not supporting a truly progressive initiative. What he said was there is no connection between paid sick leave and public health. That is completely untrue. There's any number of studies, public health studies, that show that there's a whole huge correlation between health of employees especially in restaurants, and public health. I mean, that is just not true. And the other thing he said was that it was not perfect, and that's why I voted against it. And this is his definition of pragmatism. I mean, it was not perfect, but it was a huge step forward, and it is our duty as elected officials to support something that was going to be a big step forward for workers. And I'm running out of time, but I would gladly talk, personally to any of you who want to know the basis of the larger story.
Thank you for that question. I did vote against the ordinance. I voted against it because I preferred a different version of the ordinance. If I had needed to be the fifth vote, I would have been the fifth vote for it, because I strongly believe that everybody should have access to paid sick leave. But there were real problems and issues with this ordinance. There were 30,000 people who were left out because of the way in which the ordinance was structured. There was exemptions for certain classes of people, and those exemptions, I think, were wrong. And there was the problem of not being clear as to the distinction between sick leave and vacation policies, which has led to many people calling my office and saying, my employer just told me that I can't take time off now. We used to have flexible time off, but I can't take time off now because I can only use that for sick leave because of the way the city's ordinance is structured. So there were a lot of issues with this ordinance. I cast what, in this case, was a protest vote. When it's an 8-to-1 vote, usually it is a protest vote, because I thought we could have done better. We have a model in Connecticut, a model in DC, much simpler ordinances, but things that would have been much better. But the bottom line is that I care very deeply about what happens to people in this society, and that's why I work very hard on these kinds of issues.
All right, let's give a hand to both these candidates. Thank you very much. All right, council position 4. We have a slight change to the schedule here. Sam Bolomio said, we talked to him outside, and said, yeah, he did send a questionnaire in. I didn't get it, so he's promised that when he gets back to a computer tonight, he will send it in and I will post it up. So if it doesn't show up in the next day or so, make the judgment. So, council position 4, Sally Bagshaw and Sam Bolomio. And Sally Bagshaw, you will go first. You will have 2.5 minutes. And then there'll be a 90-second rebuttal on either side.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you being here from your organization. Maple Leaf Community Association is one of the most active. As chair of your Parks and Neighborhood Committee, it has been an absolute pleasure working with you, and you have achieved so much. The 4 years that I have been on the council, I have watched the beautiful Maple Leaf Reservoir, and I hope that our friend Donna will be able to get some kind of recognition for all the work that you have done. We've also had a lot of coordination between SDOT and Seattle Public Utilities. I'm going to talk a little bit more about sidewalks, but I appreciate the fact that you have continued to put pressure on the city, and this is something that your chair here has been indefatigable, working with us to make sure that Maple Leaf Neighborhood Association is well represented. I'm very pleased about the ped and bike bridge that is going up, and I certainly credit Councilmember Conlon for his good work with Sound Transit on that. Another small but very mighty little thing that got passed through our state legislature this last year is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit bill. I worked on that for 3 years. We finally got it passed, literally 5 o'clock, the very last minute of the first session of the legislature. And what that will allow are our neighborhood greenways. Many of you in this room I have worked with. The notion of having a neighborhood greenway is a place for people to walk and ride their bikes separated from arterials and to connect our neighborhoods one to the other. The next 4 years, I pledged to be working with David Miller and with others about having a sidewalk LID and to work with our SDOT Bridging the Gap program and with Seattle Public Utilities to have a bank of money that will be accessible to different neighborhoods to be able to get the sidewalks that I know people want all across the city. I know that we need to balance the notion of growth. We've got 100,000 more people coming in. We need space for 47,000 more households over the next 10 years in the city of Seattle. I'm not talking about the region. So it's important that we are balancing the interests of our single-family neighborhoods with the need to have spaces for people to be in affordable housing. Increasing bus service is critical. I know many of you have been working along with me to make sure that Metro gets to have the local option that it needs to vote. I was with the legislators just this Monday night. If you have an opportunity to contact your legislator, let them know. It's important. Special session now.
Hello everyone, my name is Sam Bolomio, and I'm with an organization called Stand Up America. And if you watch politics in Seattle, you know who I am. I go to every single meeting, and it's not because I have all the answers, it's because no one's there. You guys are here today, which is great, but we need you at the council chambers. There's no citizen input. You know, it's strange to me that I filled out the questionnaire and I sent it in, and it's not on the Maple Leaf website. It's really strange to me. And Miller is also the chair of the Democrat Party. He's also on the, I think he's being paid for the yes on districting. You know, it's the people in control of the system. It's not the federal level. We're screwing up at the local level. Everyone that has control of our system is right here in this very room. We have control, but we've delegated it to other people and entrusted them to do things on behalf of us, and they have failed. There's no white noise in Seattle City Council. There's all bureaucrats. If you look at her endorsements, she's endorsed by almost all of Seattle Council, almost all of King County Council, representatives at state level. They're all a mafia. They stick together. You guys, we are losing power as citizens because we have bureaucrats in office. And I'm only running to be a citizen, a voice. Maple Leaf, I fill out the questionnaire. There's a lot of problems with Maple Leaf, and there's concerns that aren't being addressed. And you ask me to give you ideas and what I want to do. Maple Leaf is so unique. I don't want to prescribe what I believe needs to happen. What I want to do is facilitate the dialogue. Maple Leaf, they should be required by law to attend each district council meeting once a month. Just go at 12, there's 12, 13 districts, I think, and they can go once a month. Be required to go to a district meeting. Why are their meetings held at 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m.? Because the business owners can go while you're at work. They should be required to hold nightly meetings. And in 2011, I went to their meeting, and I realized that they're supposed to do 2 town halls a year. I brought it up. They didn't do it. 2012, they said, do your town halls. You're supposed to do it. Didn't do it. 2013, they finally did their town hall in May, and they decided to do it on green energy. They have a sustainability committee that can talk about green energy. We need a town hall that just says, you come tell me what's wrong. What can we fix as a city instead of just labeling it green energy? Then they're also doing another town hall. They're finally doing their second one, but it's during the budget hearing. So they're being lazy. They're required by law to hold hearings for the budget hearing anyways, and they're going to attach the town hall to it. We need to require them to do their job. We need to stand up and stop the corruption of City Hall from these bureaucrats. We need to stand up and become citizens activated again. So I would appreciate your vote. My name is Sam Bellamio.
Thank you. What's been a true pleasure is being here with you. What Sam said about not having night meetings is so wrong. Many of you know that I'm out at your district councils, your neighborhood associations, working with you when we're doing park cleanup. This is what I've been doing for the last 4 years. At least 3-4 nights a week plus weekends. And I'm not the only one. Our city council members are some of the most dedicated people I've ever worked with. It is a pleasure to be able to get out and to be working with you. It's why I go to our parks meetings, so that I can listen. I can hear what it is that the neighborhoods want. And for me, I can just tell you that I have gotten some of the best ideas from slowing down and weeding gardens, and whether it's over in Lake City or whether it is in some of your parks, really being able to work with you. I'm just so pleased to see these kinds of meetings in the nighttime, because this is when we can actually sit down and talk. You bet we have daytime meetings. Council works 7 days a week. And I came out of the prosecuting attorney's office, many of you know that. And I will just tell you that my favorite job that I've ever had is working with the Seattle City Council, and I ask for your vote to return that.
So you see, as you said, the Seattle City Council is doing a good job, basically. You know, you gotta powder it up for the people, but why are we doing district elect? Why do we want a district Seattle? We feel like we've lost touch. Why do we want to do Proposition 1 and fund campaign finance? Because we want change. If we want change, we need to change something fundamental. We need to change the people in office. We need to, why wouldn't she demand that they have 2-term limits? We could do 2-term limits and get a recycle of people instead of doing districting. If we want more voice in our community, we need to demand that they give it to us. She says she does night meetings. Then why are you asking her to come to your meetings? She was asked recently, sorry, I just came from the forum. They asked her, will you promise to come to at least 1 meeting a year? Why ask? If she's doing it, why would they ask? They're not doing it. We need to change something fundamental. Something needs to shift. We need to change out the bureaucrats. We just need to do a clean slate. When in our hearts, we know that we need term limits. In our hearts, we know that something's failing. We've seen gentrification of neighborhoods. Capitol Hill, all my friends are calling Condo Hill now. So we're not even having, the things that make our communities are being destroyed for private interest, and the developers are in their pockets. They're the ones getting funded. I haven't asked for 1 donation. I'm just running as a citizen. I'm coming to you with love and concern and trying to ask you to join in the fight to gain control of our government again.
So, first question, you have a minute to answer, is this. How will you work to make certain we get housing in the Northgate area that is affordable to people who work in the Northgate area?
I think there's multiple ways that we can do this. One, many of book called Unlocking Home. He suggests that we have microhousing, that we allow roommates where roommates have not been in single-family neighborhoods, and that we allow more dormitories to be built. I think that these are three ideas that are novel. Our sister city to the north in Vancouver has been doing this. They have about the same geographic area that we do, but they have, by factors multiples, more people, and they are being able to do that in a way that allows for neighborhoods to grow, but have neighborhood input the same way. I do believe that we're going to have incentive zoning where we have a minimum of 10% of affordable units in larger buildings that are built, and I think we should look at inclusionary zoning as well, which is a mandatory 10 to 15%. Other cities are doing it. It's been effective. We're going to need to use all the tools. There's no silver bullet. These are silver buckshot.
So she mentioned somewhere sprinkled there the apartments basically and how we need more dormitory. And when you add, we already took up most of the square foot that we'll be building on Seattle. Unless we want to destroy our parks and get rid of the trees, we pretty much took up the footprint. So we're going to start building up and building these smaller units, which is going to rise per square foot price. So the larger places are going to become too expensive. Well, who does that benefit? Single people moving into the city, working at Amazon maybe, but the families are going to be forced out of the neighborhoods. They're going to be priced out. The working class will be priced out. How do you bring in low-income housing or working class housing? Yesler Terrace is a good example. You keep what you have as a city and you develop it. We should have kept Yesler Terrace and not give it away to some private developer. This is something we can do up here in Maple Leaf. If you guys have a piece of land in the area that we can in the city buy and develop, let's do it. Where you guys want to place it is up to you, but we can't allow developers to dictate how we as citizens will take care of the most needy in our community. So I would, I'm for apartments, by the way. I'm pro-business, but I want to put restrictions on how many can be built.
Questions? 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 Back here in the purple shirt? Wait for the microphone, please.
Is it possible to expand mental service as opposed to looking at the 70% decrease in mental service? With current funding, would we need something like a progressive millimeter tax?
We definitely need to have...
1 minute for an answer.
Thank you. We definitely need to have more revenue. No question about that. How we get the revenue is going to be, frankly, up to the state. The city doesn't have the authority, nor does Metro, without getting state authority. Personally, I think that we should have an additional tax on heavy vehicles that are not efficient. But again, that's going to take a state legislation to allow that. Metro is looking at a 600,000 hour cutback. I was at the Transit Regional Committee today. I serve on that board. That's a 17% decrease. It's absolutely unacceptable at a time when we should be adding 600,000 hours. This is what I said earlier. It is up to our legislators, the legislature, to come back this year in November to pass a statewide transportation package so we can deal with our bridges and roads and freight corridors. We need a transportation network. We really need money for Metro. And I'm a huge transit advocate and have been. I was Metro's chief lawyer for years. I know that things changed in I-695. Thank you for money.
So we saw at the U.S. level, the federal level, that they have the debt ceiling crisis. We're collapsing basically we can't pay our bills. We're gonna have a debt default. Then we had state. I don't know if anyone knew. And 6 months ago, 7 months probably by now, we actually had a fiscal cliff. We're on the verge of having a fiscal cliff here in Washington State. I don't know why I didn't get much news, but that's why they have to make the reductions at the state level. We're running out of money, and we have to find other resources to get more transit. But I don't know what the solution is. $1 million tax? Sure, why not? We used to have 90% tax on the well fee, and that made a 60% middle class. Now they're able to dodge the taxes, and we can't get the money from them. We need to figure out how to restructure the tax code here in Seattle too, to get the money back from those people that are just sucking us dry as a community. So we can't afford transit, but we also can't afford the housing, we can't afford fixing anything as long as these people can continually abuse the system. And with all the white noise in City Hall, we can't get a squeak to change anything. So I think that's the first thing we need to do is stand up and stop the abuse.
Another question? Here?
45, right? Well, people go through there at 40 miles an hour. I went to a meeting about, where SDOT had about traffic alleviation. And these people said, no, we can't put up a stop sign, even though there's a terribly dangerous intersection. There's a terribly dangerous intersection right down the end of the block. Right? How do you think that, isn't this just tilting at a windmill to ask for a 5-mile-an-hour reduction in the speed limit when that isn't going to do a damn thing about the problem that we have?
30 seconds to answer.
So common sense is lacking in government, basically. And you point that out. I mean, if that's the solution, putting a stop sign, which if it's dangerous, we need one, so lowering it 5 miles an hour, that has been brought up, I suspect then, right? You've brought that up?
Yeah.
And what has been the response? Exactly. That's the problem. We have no control over the dialogue or how we shape our community. It's a big thumbs down. When it's our decision, when we want to do something, we get steamrolled as a community. So if someone dies, then all of a sudden it's, I wanted to do something a long time ago. But we're always, we're not even proactive, we're retroactive.
Neighborhood greenways are something that Portland has accomplished. They've got almost 80 miles now, and they've done it in 5 years. The neighborhood comes together, works with their version of SDOT, and identifies streets where they want to have the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. They use multiple tools, such as, they call them sleeping policemen, which is a large speed bump. They also put in transportation diverters so that cars slow, but bikes and pedestrians go through. Very safe, very clean. Off arterials, it's not going to happen to every street. Some streets where neighborhoods want it to happen will happen.
Thank both of these candidates for their time. Thank you. Okay, next up is council position number 6. This race features Nick Licata and Edwin Fruit. Nick filled out his questionnaire and it's online for you to view, but he is actually at a conference tonight in Yakima and sends his regrets that he isn't able to attend. So is Edwin Fruit here?
Right.
Oh, there you are. And so you have a 2.5-minute speech and then we'll do a Q&A.
Hi, I'm Edwin Fruit. I'm the Socialist Workers Party candidate for position 6. I'm a factory worker, and what I'm raising is the crisis we're facing in our country is a class crisis. The capitalist class and its two-party system have been assaulting the working class and continue to do so. We have a program put forward to unite working people and to give it the confidence to fight the eventual goal of taking political power out of the hands of that capitalist class and creating a society that puts human needs over profits. Right now, only 47% of adults who want to work have full-time jobs. It's the worst economic crisis since the 1930s. We call for a massive federally funded jobs program to put people to work to do the things that we need to get done. We call for increasing the minimum wage nationally, not just here in Seattle, it needs to be nationally. And we call for no criminalization of the undocumented and organize and unionize all workers. We say defend a woman's right to choose abortion without restriction. This has been under attack since 1975 continually. We need to mobilize our forces so that women can be equal in society. We call for freeing the Cuban five Cuban revolutionaries framed up and put in jail by the U.S. government for defending the Cuban Revolution. We also say prosecute and jail cops who kill and brutalize working people. Remember the case of John T. Williams. The cop who killed him would not even have been part of an inquest if it weren't for the mass demonstrations and marches here. And he was never prosecuted. We think that's important. Finally, we think working people need to call for no U.S. intervention in the Middle East, in Syria. We're with the Syrian workers against their oppressive regime and against any intervention at all. There's no Seattle solutions to the problems that working people face. It's a national problem, and working people are going to have to organize. We call for breaking from the Democratic and Republican Party and forming a party of working people that can begin to carry out and mobilize these kinds of demands. Thank you.
Okay, first question is, please identify an issue that is unique to Maple Leaf and tell us what you will do if you are on council to address it. 1 minute.
Well, just like there's no Seattle solution, there's no Maple Leaf solution to the problems that working people face. Over the last period, since 2008, there have been 16,000 homes foreclosed in the Puget Sound area. A recent study said there are close to 50,000 homes on the cusp. You know, if you have some big medical bill, if somebody gets laid off, you could very well lose your home. That's because housing is a commodity, and that's what's going to have to be changed. A revolution is going to have to occur in this country where housing, medical care, education are rights, not commodities. So that's what working people will have to organize for and get ourselves together and begin to organize against the capitalist system, begin to put a new kind of system in that puts human needs before profits.
Do you have any questions?
Could you make a comment on Charter Amendment 19?
Question is would you make a comment on Charter Amendment 19, which is the district elections? 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I don't really have a strong opinion about it either way. I think it depends on a particular situation. We know there are some communities, and I don't know whether we consider Seattle one of those, where minority communities, for instance, have been iced out of representation because of at-large type of voting. But in any case, the main thing, whether it's district or citywide, the main thing for working people to do is to break from the two-party system. That's the way we're going to begin to move toward the goal of taking political power.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much for coming.
Can I just make one other statement?
Sure,
okay.
Sure.
We're going to use our office, if elected, to support the struggles of working people, whether it's the farm workers in Burlington County who are fighting against the Sakuma farms for better conditions and for stopping wage theft, whether it's the UFCW, who may be on strike in a few days because of the outrageous demands of the grocery companies. We're going to support them. We're going to support the ILWU if it has to go out on strike and fight for its legacy when the maritime contract is up next year. And come to the back and see some of our books in our newspaper, The Militant. You find out about the struggles of working people in the United States and around the world.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Council Position 8. This is Michael O'Brien and Albert Shen. Michael O'Brien did fill out a questionnaire, but he sent his regrets he's not able to attend because he is out of town. Albert Shen, however, is here. So same thing, 2.5 minutes to talk, and then we'll do some Q&A.
Good evening. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Albert Shen. I am running for the Mafia, according to like Sam that was here. So, actually, my first Seattle Council position number 8. I grew up in Pullman, Washington. I came here to the UW to study environmental chemistry. I'm a second-generation Chinese American. My parents taught me that hard work and education will lead to success. They also taught me the importance of compassion, generosity, and giving back to the community. I've learned that when you see something wrong, you got to stand up and speak up for your beliefs. I own a small company, a small civil engineering company. You may not have heard of it, but we're working on some of the biggest projects here in the region. The third runway at SeaTac, stormwater retrofit program at SeaTac, and we're working on a new waterfront redevelopment program right now. I'm on the board of trustees for the Seattle Community Colleges, and having a good education policy for our entire city is very important to me. I want our city to take more leadership on our education policy as we move forward. In my work, I've dealt with a lot of the biggest problems and threats that threaten our region. I see a lot of problems and threats coming up that threaten our city, our region. I still see people that are unemployed. I see people along job lines. I see our children not getting the education they deserve. And I don't see our city using our resources wisely. What I don't see is a transportation policy for a 21st century economy. I do not see a public safety policy that embraces our diverse communities and keeps us safe. And I don't see our city to prepare some of our most difficult environmental challenges, such as your Thornton Creek problem I know that you have here. So, with my work, we have a lot of great industries here. We got industrial, maritime, manufacturing, we've got a thriving high-tech and biotech sector coming. It's up to City Council to make sure that these things continue to grow. More importantly, City Council is about diverse opinions. As an Asian American, I want to bring that diverse perspective to the City Council so it reflects the diversity of this city. So with my experience as an advocate for education, running a small business, and working with nonprofits, I believe I bring a range of leadership, vision, and expertise that the City Council needs. We need to do better, and I'm hoping to get your support tonight. Thank you very much.
Pardon me, you prepared to do a rebuttal? Okay. Okay, so the first question is, and you've got 1 minute to answer, is one of the distressing things that we've learned as a neighborhood over the last few months is that Thornton Creek has so much fecal E. coli in it that Seattle public utility workers wash themselves down in bleach after coming into any contact with the water in the creek. Unfortunately, to this point, we've had no serious attention about this in City Hall. Convince us that you would do better if you were elected to council.
That sounds gross, I would say, right? So I've done stormwater work before, and I read up a little bit on this. I read a report recently, but the issue seems to be the isolation of where this contamination is coming from. We have a lot of old homes here, the concrete lines, those concrete lines corrode over time, so that's clearly a potential source, but the issue is identifying where in the subbasins that it is. It looks like the city did a pretty extensive job going through laboratory analysis, but I don't know if they ever brought up to you what they did in Santa Barbara, the city of Santa Barbara. So it's an interesting concept. What is the one thing about fecal coal matter other than laboratory analysis that you can get? You can smell it at times, right? So they used actually what animal has the greatest sense of smell, right? So there's a team of dogs that I read up on that actually have been used to try and help identify approximately where this is coming from. So I'd suggest that's something I want to look at. We're a dog-friendly city. If there are dogs around the country that specialize in this type of smell test, they help the city identify exactly which subbasins to further hone down and find a contamination issue.
Questions from the audience? Over here.
So tonight on the way here, I walked up Roosevelt Way, and I noticed a retail district that's really fractured and splintered apart with haphazard development. So what are your policies for looking at zoning and really focusing on building sustainable neighborhoods moving forward and reining in DPD to make it work for the people of the city and not the developers?
So is that also about the small business impacts that impacted it as well?
Well, just having a broken up retail.
Yeah. So it seems like it seems like a very inconsistent policy that's going on. I mean, this growth is coming up all around the city right now with any perception of any type of strategic thinking behind it. So I really want to look at some sort of consistent policy in terms of, where is this development going? Where is it near the transit systems that we need it to be? But it's also, we have a problem with housing. People are getting displaced right now. Developers are coming in, displacing people immediately that need that affordable housing, and they're being displaced, and who knows where they're going. So I want to make sure there's a consistent policy on that. It is a big issue when it comes to small business displacement. The mom and pop traditional, businesses that have been around for a long time, they're getting displaced. I want to make sure the Office of Economic Development actually has grants and money to actually help those businesses get through this type of development. So if they're going to be in a new area, then they can sustain the construction and thrive and grow throughout as they move forward. Because the small businesses in all our neighborhoods are so unique. The unique restaurants and the stores that have been around for a long time. So it's very important to keep our characteristics of that as neighborhood there. That's like do 60 seconds.
All right. Other questions? Sure you do.
Well, we heard earlier about the possibility of getting income for or housing for low-wage workers in the form of micro-apartments and dormitories, but what about for families? How would you work on that one?
Very good one. I've heard that a lot. I mean, our neighborhoods, all these neighborhoods are very special, each individual characteristics. I took a tour up in the Capitol Hill housing area, and there was some very historical buildings. So the aesthetics of that is very important to me. And micro-housing is a result of an economic recession. People just simply can't afford to buy a home. So these things are propped up, the developers found a way, and the city got caught with their pants down, basically. So I'm really opposed to those things invading the neighborhoods. You know, they need to be in more of the business commercial areas where, you know, folks who need a lot of materials or goods, you know, they don't have kids, so they can just hop on, go to work, and live a very simple life. But as one gets older, obviously, you know, we have a family, we have goods that we develop, we have a house. So those are very important to the working families in Seattle. So I want to make sure those are preserved as much as possible and bring in some control of these micro-housing that seems to develop and keep those in more than urban centers.
All right, any other questions? Okay, over here.
What's your opinion on raising the minimum wage?
Okay, the question is what's your opinion on raising the minimum wage?
That's a popular question. I'm a small business owner. You know, having to run a business through the worst economic recession has been one of the most challenging things. You know, we've got the sick leave, there's background check legislation. I think the city council needs to do much better as far as when those type of propositions come up, that they vet them through the Seattle Chamber. There's the neighborhood chambers around, there's the ethnic chambers. And also, you know, and there's an economic development commission within the city. So there needs to be a better analysis on how that's going to impact businesses as it moves forward. I mean, we all agree that everyone needs a living wage and to be able to sustain that because this is a bad recession. But the businesses are suffering just as much. I did a lot under the Obama administration to help the Small Business Administration, you know, talk to small businesses, and especially the ethnic businesses in the region, and they're still struggling. A lot of them are down 30%. So this type of policy really needs to be thought out very carefully if it's going to happen. But I think we all agree it needs to get there, but it has to be very methodical and very carefully, you know, planned out if it's going to be implemented.
Are you against it?
What's that?
It sounds like you're against it.
I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying it has to be done carefully. You can't just throw a regulatory approach all of a sudden on the entire. So businesses are just as vested. They want their employees to be vested too. So my employees as well. You know, I'm in the engineering industry, and I've got engineers in their mid-50s, and a lot of them have got laid off, and they're done. So, you know, the survival of the business, I can't even pay the employees if, you know, if there's no equity on both sides. So I want to get there, but we have to work together on it.
Thank you very much. All right, now it's time for the mayoral campaign. This is unusual because usually the mayoral candidates get to go first. So thank you for everybody for staying late. Just as a reminder, the way our rules work is the mayoral candidates will have 3 minutes to speak. We'll have 3 minutes to speak, and then 90-second rebuttals, and then we'll go into Q&A. We'll spend the next half hour with our mayoral candidates, so there'll be plenty of times for Q&A. To our 2 candidates, we have timers with time cards and the infamous cowbell in front, so which you are both used to, I know. Without any further ado, we'll have you both up here. Mayor McGinn, 3 minutes, she'll go first, and then Senator Murray will follow. And welcome to Maple Leaf Community Council people. Everybody give them a round of applause.
Yeah, I felt like I spent a fair amount of time in this room over the years, and so I appreciate coming back here. Mike McGinn, I live right over in Greenwood, the other side of I-5 from here, over the 92nd Street Bridge, where there never seems to be a lot of traffic. I have 3 kids in Seattle Public Schools. My wife's been very involved in PTAs of every school that our kids have gone to. One is now heading off to college. I got my start in community work in Greenwood Community Council. I wanted sidewalks, and we still want sidewalks. And how can we talk a little bit about that? Because we've really worked to identify more dollars and get more dollars into neighborhoods to work on that. I was very active in the Sierra Club for years. I remained passionate about climate change. I got involved. I ran for office because I felt like government was getting too distant from the people. I felt like we held education at arm's length, the mayor did, and you know, with kids in Seattle Public Schools and all the issues there, I felt we could do better there. I felt like we weren't urgent enough about climate change. And I felt like, as a neighborhood leader, that government wasn't there enough. And maybe some of you will tell me you still feel that way, and I'd like to hear from you about that. So I ran for office, and I won, and I surprised some people when I did it. And when I got into office, the biggest challenges we faced were, frankly, jobs in the budget. We had very high unemployment. So we went to work, and we met with businesses, and we met with working people, and we worked to get our economy going again. And we've been growing faster than just about any other city in the nation. And that creates a whole new set of problems that I'm sure we'll talk about today as well. We also had to balance the budget, which was hard. But we did so without cutting human services and substantially maintaining our public safety protections. Not only that, we finished every year in the black, and we have and are rebuilding the rainy day fund to the highest levels ever. So even in the tough years, we started putting aside a little money to help preserve our bond rating. We also have the largest emergency sub-fund yet, which means that we're putting dollars into, in case we have an earthquake or natural disaster. When times got better, we put more dollars into public safety, 52 more police officers, as well as innovative new programs for people in distress on our streets. We've expanded the Seattle Youth Violence Prevention Initiative. We work to help working people with paid sick leave. Moving forward, looking backwards, we doubled the Families and Education Levy. We're now working with the City Council to get preschool for all kids in Seattle. We've also launched a transit master plan adopted by the City Council, where we're going to look to expand transit in Seattle, partnering with Sound Transit with their expansion plans, but also looking to add our own dollars, because I don't think the state or the region will ever invest as much in transit as our region would like to see. We were also working, built a leadership alliance to stop coal trains, working to divest from fossil fuels, and working to be a leader on environmental issues. Time's up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Murray, and I am glad to be here tonight. I also recognize this room from the 46th District endorsement meeting. Again, thank you for that, for those of you who were part of that process. I grew up, for those of you who don't know me, in West Seattle. I grew up in a large working class family. And my family was pretty influenced by the election of John Kennedy and the idea of public service. And that's kind of the milieu I grew up in. And I didn't think when I got out of college that I could actually participate in public service. But Seattle is truly a special place. And I had an incredible opportunity to work for Martha Cho in the City Council for 4 years. And for the last 18 years, I've been in the legislature, much longer than I intended to stay, but some things took longer to get accomplished. And during my time there, I have found out that you don't get things done unless you're willing to work with people different than yourselves. Unless you're willing to sit down and struggle with the hard problems and reach an agreement to move forward. I was able to do that in the 49-49 tie when I co-chaired the capital budget. Every community had a Republican and Democratic co-chair. We doubled the amount of money that went into the Housing Trust Fund, into low-income housing. We put the first money into farm worker housing that the state had ever put in. And that was with Republicans doing that. And then the next committee I chaired was the Transportation Committee. And thank you. The Transportation Committee. And we had for years not moved forward on transit or transportation. And we were able to bring environmentalists, labor, and business together. We were able to pass the largest transportation package in state history, start to restore funds to transit. And we passed it through the legislature, and John Carlson put it on the ballot. We won. We won by 10%. And then, as you probably know, I spent 17 years working on the issue of marriage equality. And that was an issue of bringing people of faith, people in business, and again, labor together to form a coalition, pass it to the legislature, and pass it on the ballot. I want to bring those same skills to Seattle as your mayor, because I believe that Seattle is craving leadership on public safety, craving leadership to come together and figure out how we can be a city that's affordable. My family that I grew up in West Seattle couldn't live in this city today. Craving to find a way to deal with our transportation problems, and my time is up.
90 seconds. Rebuttal? Yeah, 90 seconds. Yes.
You want to just launch into questions? Let's launch into questions.
Okay. Ladies want to launch some questions. So you guys can choose who goes first.
You can give us more time on the close.
Yes. All right, so we'll, 90 seconds for this question and the answer. Do you believe the Seattle Department of Planning and Development, and for those DPD, the people who issue permits and make development decisions, do you believe DPD needs to be reformed? And if so, how would you go about doing it? 90 seconds.
Oh, I get to go first. You get to go first.
Okay.
We'll be alternating.
Whatever he says.
It's standard.
Actually, I do. I think that the time has come for several reforms that I think need to be made to the department. One is I think we need to look at whether we should move the regulatory part separate from some of the more traditional planning functions, and also develop not so much of a watchdog approach to the department as a customer-friendly service approach to the department. So those folks, whether you're in a business or whether you're in building a residence, you can speed up the process, because when you can speed up the process without undermining any of the things that we want to protect, you can actually save money, which makes things more affordable. So those are some of the things that I think that we should do in looking at the department going forward.
What is our timeline?
That was 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And she'll hold up cards for you. 90 seconds. Do you believe DPD needs to be reformed? And if so, how would you go about doing it?
I think there's room for improvement, and we're continually working to improve. DPD was clobbered by the recession because so much of it is fee supported. And with the comeback now, we've been working to make sure they can deal with the overload of issues that come in. I think one of the significant changes from the last administration to this administration has been, what the last administration did was really move Department of Neighborhoods out of planning and put DPD as the lead on all planning. And what we've worked to do is get DON as a full partner in that planning process. Bernie Matsuno, who has come in over the last year, about 2 years ago, brought Bernie in. And Bernie was worked for Jim Deers back when, and really worked to rebuild trust between the Department of Neighborhoods and the other departments. And so they've been taking a leadership role in the community outreach and partnering with DPD on that as well. So we have a significant amount of planning issues to undertake. One of the other challenges is that between administrations, the City Council got rid of the Office of Policy and Management. It was 18 people who reported to the mayor. We went from 42 down to 14 people. 42 down to 28 people, which is kind of a council, territory grab in between mayors. And that reduced a little bit of our ability at the mayor's office, but we've really worked on having all of our department heads meet together and having interdepartmental teams around jobs and planning and youth and families. And I think that's what we continually have to do, continue to break down those silos. The cowbell's very effective. I go first this time.
You go first this time. So this is there's a preamble and then there's a question, so I apologize to everybody for the length. So the Seattle Department of Transportation, SDOT, is a city department and obviously therefore under control of the mayor. Currently in Seattle, we have decided as a matter of public policy to build bicycle infrastructure even where cyclists currently do not exist, because we want to grow the number of cyclists. However, to get a crosswalk, simple paint on a pavement, just like a bike lane is paint on a pavement, we have to prove that at least 20 people cross in an hour in some random sample before we can even have the discussion about getting that crosswalk. Do you believe this fundamental inequity between cycle safety and pedestrian safety is acceptable? And if so, why? And if not, describe to us how you will change this behavior at SDOT in 90 seconds.
Yeah, in 90 seconds, great. Well, first of all, I understand the frustration with that, because if you build better pedestrian infrastructure, you get more pedestrians. There's kind of a chicken-egg problem there. So, we under Don Lo-Jen, the new traffic engineer, we've gotten a lot more serious about pedestrian safety as well as cyclist safety. I do want to question the statement that we build bike lanes just to encourage more people to bike. We actually build bike lanes in some places, like 75th Street, in order to make it easier for people to cross the street. And I know it's controversial, but what we know is that those 2-lane each-way roadways, or like it was on 75th where it's unclear, you get very high speeds, you get cars weaving to avoid people, and you get a much higher number of pedestrian fatalities. So those 3-lane, the rechannelizations, the data shows really significantly reduce speeds, reduce accidents, and improve pedestrian crossings. And that's why we did it in Nickerson, that's why we did it on 125th, that's why we did it on 75th. So sometimes when you see those lanes, it's not about the bicyclists, it's about the pedestrians, and I want to emphasize that. We've also launched, we have our traffic safety cameras out there, and I hope nobody would exceed the speed limit near a school, because high speeds kill, low speeds are much safer, but we are collecting a lot of revenue right now. $14.8 million over the next 2 years is what we anticipate. We will put that all into safe routes to schools, including on some of the schools up here. I think this one too is on the list.
So I think the problem isn't bicycles versus pedestrians. The problem is that, as I said before, the planning happens separate from each other. And we don't look at a neighborhood as a corridor. And sometimes bike lanes need to be on one street and cars and buses need to be on the other street. But the other issue in not having that sort of planning is we don't prioritize. And I'll give you an example. Vancouver, British Columbia actually does an integrated prioritization process. And they made a decision that the first thing they would do is pedestrian infrastructure. Because if you ride a bike, if you ride a bus, if you get in a car, if you're going for a walk, you need the sidewalk first. And as you know, Vancouver, BC has bike lanes and they have light rail and the rest. But I think that we have, every year that Bridging the Gap, the levy that is supposed to be funding repairs, is doing fewer and fewer sidewalks. And I do think that we should make a prioritization about how we want to do our system. And if we want to do transit first or bike lanes first, fine, but I think we need to make a decision because we're in conflict with each other on what we should do. And those conflicts between bike lanes and pedestrians and buses and cars is creating a lot of tension out there. So I think if we do an integrated, prioritized approach, we can come up with a different system than we currently have today.
Right. Questions from the audience? Right. We'll go here first.
Question for Mr. Murray.
You go first then. Oh, it's
Do
gone.
you still believe there needs to be another study done about completing the Burgilman Trail through Ballard?
No, I
Okay,
don't.
one minute to answer, and we'll just make the general question. Let's both talk about your views on completing Burgilman Trail.
No, I don't. There's a study that's currently going on that is not finished. The statement I made regarding the Burgilman Trail is I believe that there are safety issues and that there are design issues that can be addressed. Somehow that got turned into that I believe that the Burgilman Trail should, the link in Ballard near the maritime industry should not go there. I said something very different. I said something a lot of environmental groups are saying, which is there are some safety issues and we need to look at some engineering solutions. And again, there is a study that's being done and we do have to wait for that study to know what it is that we should do.
Yeah, I support completing the missing link of the Burke-Gilman. There's a preferred option. We have been ordered by the court to do an additional environmental impact analysis. We're going to do that. There's potential that will get appealed too, and who knows how many years before we can get to the point of completion. But I'm committed to pushing ahead. And of course, we'll work to address those issues as well. But I've also put dollars in our budget this year to address immediate safety needs on that corridor. I think the thinking was that we were going to get approval, we'd go ahead with the permanent improvements. Now that we're having delay, we're going to make improvements immediately in the places where there are the most accidents to make it safer while we complete that environmental review. I do have concerns about Senator Murray's commitment to biking because he's also been raising money from folks who've raised a lot of concerns about the Westlake cycle track. People bike in the parking lot from the Fremont Bridge to downtown, and that's something we've gathered money for. We really need to make it safe because it's not safe for people to be riding through the parking lot as well.
Okay, next question. Here.
Would you support a tax credit to landlords who rent to people who have dogs?
30 seconds. Question is, would you support a tax credit to landlords who rent to people who have dogs?
That's the first time I've been asked.
Good night, Claudia.
I think you got out of that question. No, that's just pretty straight yes or no. I don't know. I probably not. That's probably where I am. I hope people with dogs can find good places to live. I got a beautiful dog, Midge. We love our dog, but I don't know if we should give tax credits for that.
I might.
Dang, he's going for your vote. He wants your vote, brother.
But, I mean, I had a dog that I took to Olympia every day and was in my office every day, and he passed away, but now we have another dog, so I'm rather attached to dogs. One of my few non-political legislative activities. So I might.
Question over there.
Ken Jacobson, your senator, actually had the dogs in bars bill.
I've been teaching at the Seattle Community Colleges for 20-some years, and I have seen over the years the education funding dropping, of course, at the state level, and seeing programs cut, seeing the administration of our college more and more, aiming at trying to find ways to get revenue and, relying on international programs, relying on all sorts of things that they can do. But what I would like to hear is how you as mayor, either of you, would lobby Olympia, would do for us what really needs to be done, which is, a full funding of these programs that were great. I mean, we have programs like interpreter, sign language interpreter training, video programs, all sorts of programs at Central, for example, where I teach, that were cut because there's no support for them at the state level. So I'm just wondering, what you have seen, what you would like to see done.
Sure.
90 seconds.
And I've had the privilege of visiting every community college in the state but one, and when I chaired capital budget, we put the biggest single capital investment in the community college system at that time. But during the Great Recession, as we lost $20 billion in anticipated state revenue, we raised taxes as one way to preserve those programs. Regrettably, those taxes were overturned by the people. There was also an initiative that Bill Gates Sr. did for an income tax. We also lost on that one. So programs that many of us work to build with you in community colleges, including the culinary program, which I had a lot to do with at Seattle Central. It's been a very difficult situation for those of us who built those programs to cut those programs. And the problem with education will not be solved unless we have a serious change in heart in the state around revenue. And we simply cannot fund education without an additional revenue source. We have fought for that in Olympia. I introduced a bill over the last several years to a capital gains tax. We're only one of 5 states that doesn't have one. I think a mayor who has good relationships with Olympia can push those things forward, and I think that I can do that. And I think I can do that in partnership with all of you to go down to Olympia together.
I would like Senator Murray to use his good relationships in Olympia while he's there. And I'd encourage him to stay there and work on that, because it's been bad. It really has been bad. You mentioned the community college system. We're 43rd in the nation in per capita spending per student, and the state's under a court order to fund education. So what we've done locally is, I mentioned the Families in Education Levy. We've doubled that. I've worked and helped raise money and campaign for our school levies. We formed partnerships with the community college system around job training and pathways to careers, in which we try to connect low-income folks with innovative new ways of reaching them to jobs in our fastest growing areas. We've done an education leadership group here in Seattle, Jill Wakefield, as well as the UW, Jose Banda from the schools, Gates Foundation, Seattle Foundation, SEIU, AFL-CIO. We've invited all of the United Way, all of the major funders to come together in an education roundtable where we work together to go down and lobby Olympia as well. But there are real challenges, and those challenges, of course, were made deeper by the loss of the state Senate to the Republicans. Now, Senator Murray occasionally gets defensive on this point. I'm not trying to lay everything at his feet, but the reality is he's been down there for 18 years, he's been a leader, and he's now running on a record if he can bring his leadership ability here. We've increased our spending, we brought people together around education.
Here.
Good evening, gentlemen. As mayor, what would you or could you do to support facilities for K-12 education here in Seattle? Right now, you might think of Seattle as being relatively childless, and only 15% of households reporting have kids through the US 2010 census. But actually, if you pull out and look at the whole Puget Sound region, that's an artifact. And in fact, about 4 years ago, out-migration from Seattle of families stopped. And that's really exciting. It does good things for the family, build back to what we consider normal. Having said that, it also creates a huge problem. So right now, this school...
So the question is, again,
well,
what's your question?
What would you do for the facilities? Because Nathan Hale right now, they're full. They were only just renovated. They can't put portions on the
So is it all
ground.
schools, or is it just?
Oh, it's all
No, I know, but what your question is, state your
What would
question.
you do to improve, what would you do
What
to
can you
assist,
do?
what can we do from the city side to assist the school district meet the demand for all of the new students that are entering Seattle Public Schools? Which is an awesome question. Which is an awesome question. And it's true, 5 years ago or 4 years ago, we were closing schools, and the school district didn't anticipate the wave of new students it would get. And in fact, we haven't been losing kids the way historically it had been happening. And the neighborhood schools are another reason why people suggest it's much more popular. Whatever the reason, it's growing fast. We have a demographer, we share with them. We have put together a special team in DPD to facilitate construction. I meet quarterly with Jose Banda and the superintendent, and I met quarterly with the last superintendent, and I met quarterly with Maria Goodlow Johnson, Susan Enfield. And this is one of the things that we discuss too. You tell us what you need, you tell us your timelines, we will facilitate the permitting and what's required. But it may yet take more than that. I mean, we had a very large capital levy, and there are legitimate concerns as to whether that next capital levy will in fact meet the demand. And the demand is, some of this up here in Northeast is one of the strongest areas of demand. And I think sometimes in the campaign, you'll start hearing the push for, well, what about a downtown school? And for the record, I support one, but we've been working to try to leverage that from the private sector through new development, because the growth is actually faster in other places than it is downtown. So this is a big deal, and I would do everything in I can to partner with the school district to assist them with that. And we may even have to start looking at land we have available. In fact, we looked at downtown land as well. For a downtown school, we couldn't find any that we had that was legally usable for that purpose.
Sure. Before I get to your question, just a comment on the last question. You know your legislators, Ken Jacobson and now David Frog and Scott White and Phyllis Kenny and Justin Shore. These are not people who, and all of them, in one sense or another, have been leaders as well as the Speaker of the House, Frank Chop. These are not people who destroy programs and fail to act. You know before the Great Recession, these are people who build programs. And I think that it just is taking an argument of the far right and banging Democrats with it. We build programs. We did great things the mayor doesn't know about. But we also faced the Great Recession. And it's unfortunate that the people return the taxes. But you know, every problem in Seattle is not Olympia's fault. And if I'm mayor, if there's a transportation problem, I won't blame Olympia. If there's an education problem, I won't blame Olympia. I'll take responsibility and build bridges with Olympia. I think the school district needs to be challenged by the city in a way it has not been challenged before. The family and education levy was a great thing that Norm Rice put in place. But we need to get different results from our school district. And it could be as a result of, let's say, we get more people graduating, such as only 60% of African Americans graduate. In return, we might be to partner with them on construction. Maybe we take a piece of that on, or some other interlocal agreement. But the current situation that has gone on for many years, and is not related to this mayor's race, it's related to how the school board functions. That's a very challenge.
Any questions? We'll go over here next.
My general question will be, what motivates you to want to be the mayor of the city? My specific question for Ed Murray is, I've been trying to understand why you're choosing to run for mayor as opposed to continuing in your position of leadership and seniority in the legislature.
30 seconds.
Sure. I've been in the legislature for 18 years, longer than I had planned, and this is the end of this period of my life. 18 years is a long time, and so I believe I've done my public service in Olympia. And I also believe I have a set of skills, and you can look at my 18-year record and look at things that people said would never happen, and I was able to make them happen. And I want to be mayor of Seattle because I was able to bring about some pretty significant changes in civil rights, in bullying in our schools, in the environment, such as the Clean Car Bill, the strongest emission standards in the country, in homelessness. The King County Homeless Coalition made me the legislator of the year this year of all years in one of the most difficult environments. I want to bring those same set of skills to the city that I love, to the city that I have been raised in, to the city that I want saw work together instead of liberals attacking liberals. I want to show folks how liberals and progressives actually can work together to get things done. So that's why I'm running for mayor of Seattle.
You know, I've always enjoyed that why are liberals attacking liberals, and he's running against me. You know, I mean, this is, and I'm not, but I don't deserve the job just because I'm here, and he doesn't deserve the job just because he spent 18 years in Olympia. We deserve the job based on what can we do moving forward, and what do we care about, and what are the issues that matter. And I got into politics because I mentioned at the front end. I thought we'd grown too distant from government, like I said, and that's why since I've entered office, we've held 153 town halls, and we've brought government out there and we've listened. Education really matters to me, you know, not just because I have kids, but because I can see what it did for my own parents and what it means to a community, what it means to equality and opportunity. And so that's why, again, not only have we done the Families and Ed Levy, not only looking at universal preschool, but we've launched an attendance campaign. We have a Rise and Read program for, you know, our immigrant families who can help teach their own kids to learn to read. And I'm really passionate about climate change is one of the reasons I got in too. Now again, you gotta work on every issue that we have. We work on jobs and public safety and housing. But on climate change, you know, we're the first generation that can see the effects of climate change right in front of us. And we're the last generation that can do anything about it. Right? And I want to say we did something about it. I don't want to say that we all worked in coalition and it took us years and years, but we made a little bit of progress. I want to do something. That's why I ran, and I love the job, and I love the people, and I think we built a foundation for the future to keep moving on those issues.
Great, one more question back here.
Earlier I asked a question about metro service and how it can be expanded, it's been decreased. We've heard other issues as well that are related to issues of taxation. Why are we not hearing from either one of you, both of you, about taxing people who are much richer than most people in this room, people who are a million years and above? Why are we not hearing talk about that?
So the question is why are we not hearing about a tax on millionaires and above for the benefit of transportation? 60 seconds from both of you.
This is worth 90, actually.
Okay, we'll do it.
Come on, transportation financing, it matters, and tax policy. We have the most regressive state and local tax system in the nation. And I don't get to pick and choose taxes at the city level. I can only use taxes which are given to, which authority is given to us by the legislature. And in fact, that's one, and Metro matters. You know, I worked with 47 mayors. You know, after we went out to you with a vehicle license fee, flat fee for every car, people didn't like it because it was the same for a Beetle or a Lexus, right? Beetle or a BMW. And we came close, but not close enough. So I went out and worked around the state. We put together a coalition of 47 mayors around the state. And what we were looking at was a motor vehicle excise tax. It's not perfect, but at least wealthy people with wealthier cars would pay more. And that would help fund not just transit, but would also help fund local street repairs as well, which is the level of support we get from the state on that has declined over the years as well. So that was what we went to the Senate for. It's not, it went through the House, it hasn't succeeded in the Senate yet. And I'm hopeful that we can get there. But at the same time, I personally believe that if we don't see state action on this, that we should look at a property tax measure in King County or perhaps in Seattle alone, because 17% cuts to Metro would be really hard on our people, really hard on our economy, really hard on our communities. And I kind of want to set the hostages free from Olympia. They always hold it hostage to us.
Well, just again to comment on Mayor's comment on the last question, working in coalition for a lot of years to get some little thing done, that's not what I'm talking about. I worked in coalition for 17 years to get marriage equality, and that's not a little thing. I don't work on little things. To get to your question, you know, they told me I couldn't pass that bill. I introduced a bill 2 years ago and this year that we have a capital gains tax. We're only one of 5 states without a capital gains tax. So I understand that we recently lost the income tax battle at the ballot, but a capital gains tax to me is one of the most logical places to go. It would affect like 99% of the people. It's actually, I think, 98% of the people in Washington would not be affected by this. But all that capital that makes money and doesn't work, we could tax. In regards to transportation, I did get a $15 weight fee put on every single car in the state that now goes into our local transit services. But Metro has a long-term, many years, again, predating Mayor McGinn, it's not his fault, long-term funding issue that we have not been able to solve. The Great Recession made it better. Governor Inslee is going to call us back. He said before the Apple Cup, in the conversations that I've been in, I think we're close. I think the legislators on the east side of the lake realize that Metro cuts will hurt them as much as us.
Right, so now we're going to allow, we'll be closed for 90 seconds. Mayor McGinn, you can go first.
No, he does. I opened.
Okay, doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter.
Senator Murray, you can go first.
Doesn't matter to me either. And I want to thank you all for this opportunity. It's really great to see such a large crowd on this late at night, so thank you. I want to tell you a little bit about my campaign because I think it'll say a little bit about the kind of mayor I will be. I have put together a campaign based on some pretty strong principles. One is that we make this an affordable city again, affordable for all economic groups and for the diversity that Seattle's been famous for. As I think I mentioned, the family that I grew up in wouldn't be able to afford to live here today. I've been happy to receive the endorsement of 19 labor unions. It's more than that now, actually, including the 2 largest service unions, the 2 largest SCI unions. I'm happy that I received the endorsement of businesses as well, because you need a vital business environment to be able to pay for all the things we want to do in our social safety net. I'm happy to have received the Washington Conservation Voters endorsement. They gave me that because of my work on the environment, and they are the leaders fighting coal trains. I'm happy that Planned Parenthood gave me their sole endorsement for my work over the years on women's health issues. That's the sort of variety of folks that I want to bring together at the table to move Seattle forward on those issues around transportation, affordability, the environment. That's why I'm running for mayor. It's been great serving the 18 years I've served in Olympia. And by the way, Gary Locke said when he ran for county exec, no one ever asked him why he was leaving the legislature. And but I would hope that you would consider voting for me. I hope that you would look at the full 18 years of my legislative career when you make that decision. Because like Gary Locke and Booth Gardner, I think legislators have proven to be fairly effective in local government. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You know, 4 years ago, you elected me, and you wanted change. You wanted a different, something different from the past. The incumbent was defeated, and you actually looked to 2 newcomers, Joe Mallahan and I. And you probably, did that for the same reasons that I ran. It felt like there were burning issues, urgent issues that were neglected. And, I've been accused sometimes of being combative or divisive. I've heard that out there. The Seattle Times likes to say that. But I think it's important to raise tough issues, because the opposite of that is neglect. And I think we've seen neglect of a lot of issues, neglect of our school system, neglect of our mental health system, neglect of our roadways, neglect with response to the environment. So I've pushed hard on that. And occasionally that's created a little bit of a stir. Woodrow Wilson, a famous progressive, once said, if you want to make enemies, try making change. And I think he's right about that, right? But we've also gotten a lot done. As we look at a federal government that, was shut down, if we look at a state government that went into overtime and was labeled one of the least productive sessions either, here, we finished every year in the black. We're rebuilding the rainy day fund. We've doubled our investment in education. We've protected human services and expanded them for those most in need. We've worked to put more money into the neighborhood matching fund, neighborhood street fund. We've increased basic paving. We have a transit master plan underway in which we're working to prioritize transit on our streets and work with Sound Transit to get it to ballot by 2016. And my opponent is proud of his endorsements. I get it, but if you take a close look, it's the same crowd that supported Nichols. It's the same crowd that supported Malahan. And I'm really proud to have support of low-wage workers, the Sierra Club, and just regular working folks, because that's who I want to keep representing. And thank you.
Give a round of applause to All right, before people get out of here, a couple of things. Those of you who have been to Maple Leaf Community Council meetings before were perhaps a little surprised at the fact that I wouldn't take questions from a certain gentleman over on the edge over here. For those of you who watched the King County, for those of you who either watched the King County Council or the Seattle City Council meetings, these gentlemen are so disruptive that both councils have banned them from their council chambers. I have been the moderator of other meetings where if you give them an inch, they take a mile. And so this is why, in case you were wondering why I was not taking any questions and being frankly a little rude to these gentlemen, it's not something we normally do here in the Maple Leaf community. As those of you, I see a lot of familiar faces. I thought it important to explain that for those who don't spend their free time watching Channel 21 or Channel and who understand what the issue is. Before we close, I want to find out if anybody's got any questions for us about issues that are coming up. If you look at the bottom down here, you will see an outline of our next few meetings. Please put them on your schedule to come. In the emails that I sent out, I made a plea for people to come to this meeting, letting you know that the more people who show up to this, it makes a difference when your community council goes down and advocates to City Hall on your behalf. You heard that from some of the candidates saying what a great turnout this was. From the top and bottom of my heart, you guys, I say this all the time, you guys make it really easy for us on the executive board to represent you because you are so involved. So thank you very much for coming. If you have any questions, you can either catch me after, although we do have to be out of here in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much, and great.